Well, Gavin, good to see you again, mate.
Nice to see you, Coco. Long time no see. It's been at least a day.
I know.
Since we're on the Columbia Group Unplugged podcast, we're just going to have some conversation. So, What is it that actually got you into health and safety? Obviously, you've been with Columbia. You've passed your probation period. That's a full year and a bit.
I know.
What brought you into it?
Yeah, Gavin, it's a long story, but, I've been in the industry for over 35 years now and started as a cadet. It's the same as you. It was an experience where I kind of, we all seen that, but the one that I had was quite a dramatic, particularly a friend of mine who paid his life on board the vessel due to the accident. And it was something that shocked to everybody. And of course, me was on board at the time, get called in the afternoon saying, Coco, come to the ship's hospital. Your friend is actually injured. And then when you actually go into the hospital and seeing him lying in bed and unconscious, but still breathing. And of course, that was first moment where, remember, I was cadet, only like 2 years at sea, still learning, and seeing somebody lying in bed and who I talked to every evening. Particularly, he came from Myanmar, which I also from Myanmar. So we chat pretty much daily. So I know his entire family, how many kids, brother and sister he's got, and so on, his study life, and how poor they are. And of course, anyway, as I take him to the hospital, that was in Japan, and he didn't make it, so brain hemorrhage. And later I came back to the ships. I was so, as you can imagine, so upset, and then went down to the engine room to ask the colleagues, what happened? He said he fell through the hatch. It's almost 2.5 meters down to the bottom. And when I saw that and heard, I said, why not stop that? Whatever that he's doing. And then later found out that second engineer actually right in front of him, and he could have stopped that. He's falling into the hatch. And again, the hatch wasn't covered properly. And he wasn't wearing safety helmet. Okay, might help a little bit if, fall down and hit the deck in the bottom. But now it's straight head to the deck. And that is where my passion on safety is like, that's it. I need to do something for a company, for the ships, for my colleagues. And of course, as soon as I moved to the shore side, that was me, ended up in a safety. So I was born with safety, and I continue to do so to save people's lives and others. So maybe perhaps you might have the same.
It's actually an interesting comment because from my time at sea, from working in other companies previously, I found that the people that are most committed to safety and gravitate towards HSE, HSEQ, QSHE, however you want to phrase it.
That's correct.
They all seem to have a similar experience, either directly to themselves or to someone that they've worked with or someone that they've seen or known have an accident afterwards.
Yes.
From my own side, quite early on as a cadet, I was in the pump room of a VLCC in dry dock, was checking pipes, making sure the valves were reseated properly and just checking everything. And we had a blackout. I was right at the edge, fell backwards and landed in the bilges. And for a good 20 minutes, I couldn't move. I'd winded myself and ended up quite badly bruised. And that was in easily one of the most well-regarded companies for safety in the world. And everyone that I have worked with in the past in health and safety departments in other companies, they all have a story in the same flavor, something that's happened to them that's maybe refocused their attention, maybe adjusted it. It's just unfortunate that they have to have those experiences to wake up to that kind of perception. You've been in the industry a bit longer. What would you say are the biggest changes from then when your friend passed away till now? What would you think it would still happen? Or do you think things have changed?
It's a fair question, actually. Something that we should talk more often, to be honest, because basic seamanship doesn't change. Back in the day of a sailing boat, I don't know, 18th century or 17th century, safety is still safety, but probably doesn't call it safety. But industry change regulation in terms of changing the engineering solution perspective of that ship's equipment and design of the ships and that kind of thing. But in reality, actual practice, we still have to always think basic safety or basic seamanship. Good old seamanship. And the case with my friend there, if somebody passing by is seen he's standing next to the hatch, only thing you need to say, gentlemen, can you please move to the one side just in case you fall back? And no doubt, some other sailor who passing by, in fact, I wish I was there to stop that. We call it Stop Work Authority, right? That's a new fancy name. Stop Work Authority doesn't come from a regulation. This is something the best practice of the industry can carry on. And I wish, someone there to stop that. And he be still alive. He could be working in somewhere as a technical director, perhaps. He's a so clever guy, finished 7 years studying in engineering university and ended up with, tragic death. That's one of the examples. So in terms of regulation, there's a lot of regulation changes. I would say not enough to protect our seafarers. Only way we can do it is to educate our seafarers, changing their behavior, to work safely. The key thing is don't bring the behavior that you do at home to the ship. Because this is where, as soon as you sign off the vessel, you switch off, do you? And don't you? And then you go home and, cut something, cooking something for your loved one, and then ended up with cutting your hand. That kind of basic thing that you should be always, safety always everywhere, at home, and at work, traveling, So, I hope I answer your question.
Well, it is something I've noticed. We're very prone. I mean, you do quite a lot of incident investigations. I do. We all do as part of the job. And so often what we see is we need to paint this yellow. We need to barrier tape this if he'd been wearing the PPE. And I think in your case, in my case, and in most cases, actually, the most effective thing is not to do it. I think we're so focused on board the ship on, I have to finish this, I have to do that, the vessel has to go there. And what we really miss, or what I find we miss, is people saying, I need to do this safely. I need to think about how I'm doing it. And something that you quite regularly bring up is the domino effect, how much one injury, one incident, one accident actually impacts on the wider group. I mean,
absolutely.
You're talking about your friend and his family and how poor the family was and how much of an impact that had. But even just within the organization, within the company, it's a huge impact whenever something happens.
That was the ethos that came up with, and there is a domino effect on building the barrier not to have accidents, but no one actually, kind of think of the domino effect on loss, right? Just because of you're not invested that 5 minutes or 10 minutes and ended up with thousands of hours from everybody. In fact, where we are talking now is all about just because someone did not, stop or think before they engage the task.
As an industry, we're very prone to reflective learning, looking backwards and seeing where the mistakes were made. How do you see the future? How do we become more proactive and less reactive?
Proactive approach to safety is the ethos that I believed on. And as I said, I've been in the shipping industry for long enough to actually see if we are proactive on identifying something before something gonna happen. So we talk about near miss reporting. Yes, it still is important, which is required under the ISM code. However, before the near misses happen, we should be identifying unsafe act, which somebody behavior towards doing the job safely or not doing, or not aware of, or unsafe condition where the equipment is broken, that somebody didn't actually pick it up, or about to leak something. So those tools are, I would say, more important to proactiveness of preventing accidents. And of course, all these two unsafe act and condition need to come from human behavior. Unfortunately, everything is linked to human behavior, right? If we behave proactively, then yes, we won't have accidents or incident, all right? And to be able to do that is we need to change the people mind setting, and that is where change of human behavior take longer. I'm sure you know where you are now and where you've been before. It's that take time to change human behavior.
It does, and I think better or worse, we end up with quite a proactive adjustment to our mindset when we have an accident or when something does happen.
Yeah.
But it is something that Mark O'Neill is very fond of talking about, is imagine your crewmates, particularly while you're on board, are like family. What would you do if it was your mother, father, sister, brother? How would you respond differently? And I think that is a mindset that would be wonderful to bottle and try and put into the drinking water on board.
Yes.
Try and change that perception and try and make people think more intimately, more closely about what safety really means to them and what they would do in a different frame of that situation. Would you let your son operate in that kind of way, or would you step in and stop it, even knowing that your son might be upset and aggravated? Why are you getting in the way, Dad? Well, actually, you've only got the best interests at heart. And I think that's something that everyone has an innate kind of belief in. But when we get into a work mode, when we think about professionalism, we kind of switch a certain element of our compassion and our personability off in order to make that detachment that comes with not getting frustrated with something, but also switching off to other things that maybe we should get a bit more involved in. Although this year's biggest regulatory change is the ETS coming in.
Yeah, which, if you look at on that side, yes, EU fuel and EU ETS, and also MARPOL Regulation 6, where Mediterranean with a low sulfur fuel, and that's June 2025. So of course that's impact to our owners and affect helping for a CO2 emission.
Part of the long-term strategy for zero emissions industry.
Net zero by 2050. So
it does remind me, we were quite regularly in and out of San Francisco when I was sailing.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, we went out and it was a picture of our ship alongside the quay with a small sewage coverlet to the side of the port, to the side of the terminal. And the article was huge. It was shipping, pollution, sewage, untreated sewage into the water. And actually it was about the sewage culvert to the side, nothing to do with the ship. So we are quite a visible perspective. When there is smoke coming out of the ship, people see that as being a huge negative. And undoubtedly pollution in any form is something that needs to be avoided. But compared to the other methods available, it is still one of the most environmentally operable ways of transporting goods worldwide.
If you look at per our CO2 emission per tons that we are transporting, compared to any other, we were the lowest, as a shipping, as you can see now, it's the size of the container ships, that amount that are carrying, and then equivalent to what they are burning or what they are emitting is particularly on cleaner, low sulfur fuel. It's not a lot, and good to see that moving in towards use of LNG fuel as a transitional, or methanol or biofuel in the future. Ammonia is one of the, I would say, quite a lot of people pushing, and let's see. I would love to see change to that, and look forward to see 2050 with net zero, and see it could be all sailing again. Never know. Which some ships are fitted with mechanical sail on board as well, that you probably see.
I've seen quite a lot of ideas, and I think that's maybe the takeaway from the 2020s will be thinking differently about emissions, thinking about what in the past can be brought out. Because you were talking about code of safe working practices, seamanship, all of this hasn't
Yes.
really changed
Yeah.
in the last
No.
century.
Oh.
But now we're going back to look at sales and other possible alternatives. And while some of them I think are quite headline grabbing, there is some science and some thought behind what might have been offloaded a bit quicker when there's still some mileage to go in it that we can still implement into modern technology. And that, I think, brings us quite nicely onto the sustainability aspect of shipping. It's a huge thing for Colombia in the last few years, between single-use plastics, introducing water fountains and water purification on board. What do you think is the biggest challenge in sustainability for shipping?
First of all, need to be aware of what sustainability is, right? It's a word that merchant seafarers not necessarily know about.
They tend to think of it as environmental compliance, not sustainability.
That's and in fact, it's correct. You know, the environmental play the big part of sustainability. However, the bigger picture to cover, you know, E and S and G, right? So the social part is quite important, and you know, if you're going to be sustained for next, I don't know, 100 years, and we need to look at that E, S, and G and how we manage things in terms of governing, you know, the whole organization. And I'll give you one example of sustainability is we as a Columbia Group, Shola Holding, we own ships, right? So we are accountable for, you know, you build the ships until the ships go recycle. I wouldn't use scrap. I would say recycled. And that is, you know, we need to plan. We make sure that is, you know, as green as possible, right, to be sustained for the future. So we can build more ships or much more greener vessel, much more efficient in terms of helping the environment and emission. And of course, when you recycle, make sure that we recycle according to the new regulation come in. In fact, enforced this year is Hong Kong Convention. And I know EU recycling has already been enforced, but of course, you know, we are EU companies, so we need to follow both Hong Kong Convention as well as the EU. And that is a big, again, I've managed to get that experience where I actually audited one of the recycling yards, believe it or not, in India, in Alang shipyard. It was eye-opener. And that was a European company that I used to work with, and they were actually go there to scrap the vessel. And the first time ever I managed to audit in terms of compliance to ISO standard and EU recycling. It's eye-opener. And you see the miles and miles of ships recycling, and of course the yard that we selected, and we teach them how to recycle the ships properly, safely. Importantly, make sure nobody injured and, you know, affecting the environment. And they did. They follow what we recommend, and we go and watch them every step of the way. And of course, next door neighbor, where you see without any PPE, the guy just sitting there cutting big, massive steel plate with a gas torch going on. And on this side of the fence, where we use that yard, it got full PPE and, you know, proper personal protective, including a mask and proper welding goggle and so on. And you see the impact. And the guy on the other side, the workers, they all want to work on this side. Yeah, as you said, the family. And believe it or not, it's happened. And then you see the whole family working in one yard because they used to be in a different yard. But now the father who worked in our yard and start calling other son and uncles and everybody else, like, hey, come and work here. It's much safer here, right? So that's to give you a sustainable way, a sustainable approach is important for our business. And that's just to give you one example. And of course, many other examples.
Well, it is always something that's a really positive thing to see. And we do have it in the fleet where, generally not in the same department, but quite often some of our captains have sons, daughters that are coming in through the cadetship programs.
That's right. Yep.
Normally in an opposite department. So there's obviously a bit of diversification there. Yep. But it is a really positive indication about the future of the company when you can honestly say that you would welcome your family in to work with you. And encourage them to do so. And I think that's something I would love to see more of. Apparently, crewing says we've got about 15,000 seafarers, and seeing more coming every day and more wanting to come in.
You touched that point. Yes, we need to sell it. We need to sell the maritime industry to the newer next generation. That's part of us. I would say social. We need to do more of those. Visit our local schools in here and other international the places where our offices are, to visit school and tell them what shipping is all about and how green we are. It's sometimes they don't see that way. The only way is to educate them and sell merchant navy. Let's say good old merchant navy to our new generation. That's again part of the sustainability that I believe we're doing.
It is something that I think people tend to forget. They see the ship and they don't see the wider connection that goes there. There's hundreds of ships, thousands of seafarers, dozen offices, more if you include all of our manning offices, covering such a huge area: Europe, Japan, Asia. I think we've got some offices in Morocco and other African areas. And it's just such a huge, diverse, widespread organization that we don't tend to think too much about because we just see what's in front of us.
Yes.
But that is one of the most interesting things about Columbia as a group, just how many areas we're active in, how many initiatives we're involved in, how often we're brought in by other industry members to contribute our expertise. And that's from the shore side and from the office side. From the ship side.
The services that we offer, not just a maritime industry, actually now getting bigger and bigger to other industries. So yeah, you're right.
Definitely. And POCR is our provider to help with monitoring all the ship emissions, routing, all the different aspects that we've done that we tend to look at, we're reducing our plastic use, which we are. But there's so much more and so much more impact from all of the group working together. And the more people we bring in, the more entities we create, the more expertise that we leverage.
Anything is possible. Remember
everything is possible.
Yes,
but,
everything, absolutely.
I think that's a bright future for Columbia, is that looking for innovating, looking at the different options, trying to work out where strengths can be leveraged, where people can contribute, and that for our seafarers and for our shore personnel, the opportunities really are very wide, very open. Even a deputy directorship in the future might be.
Hey, never say never. As I said before, is knowledge make a difference. Make sure that our seafarers are fully aware of what's going on and what we do and all the good stuff that we have. And of course, inviting their ideas. We need their input. At the end of the day, they're out there. They're doing day to day, on the ships, and they tell us what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. So kind of two-way, and look forward to see what the ship's coming back with, some of the suggestion for reduction of waste. It will be interesting, and I know you also participated quite a lot in sustainability movement, I would say, which is thanks for that. That's really good, and you need that, or we need like you and others to come on board and drive that forward. Is I would say quite important.
It is that every little helps. It's not just about the big things. It's not about changing the world. It's changing your own habit, and from there,
remember, small things matter, right?
They add up.
They add up to the big.
It's that avalanche thing. One pebble sets it going, and maybe someday that'll be the difference. Gavin, it was really good to chat with you. It's really I think we should do more. So I really appreciate it. Well, thanks, mate. Lovely to chat with you, Ko Ko, as always. And have a nice weekend. Yeah. Thank you. You too.